back and bigger than ever. It's the Unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carrie, Josh, Eddie, and Bob.
All right, welcome back. It is the Unofficial 40 podcast right here from Soonerscoop.com studios, where we welcome in the entire gang, including Bob Przybylo will be joining us. He's grabbing his lunch right now. We're back in the studios. We will be having YouTube soon with the Unofficial 40 podcast. We're kind of full here. We got Eddie and George taking over YouTube right now. You guys are doing a great job. I know you're feeling it a little bit today as well because after 2 days of practice and long nights of YouTubing, it's a lot to take in. So I appreciate you guys being here today. Josh McQuiston is back with us. He's being blocked by a camera right now, but we can see him. Anyway, lots to talk about, but first, one piece of, we're airing a grievance, I guess, but a massive congratulations to our own Eddie Radosevich, who, it was announced yesterday, Lindsey Street will be back open for tailgating. That doesn't mean that we're going to have a Sooner Scoop tailgate. Like I know that's going to be the first question that everyone wants.
Yeah, the last thing is we want to meet people and talk to actually get out and see people. That's the last thing that we.
Yeah, we're hermits. We like our studios and our YouTubes and our podcasts, and that's about it. But no, congratulations, Eddie. And my bone to pick with you is I feel like Josh and I, we were your super PAC, but we haven't gotten any credit out of this thing.
Well,
we funded. Make Lindsey Street great again.
Okay, well, I mean, thank you.
See, no gratitude whatsoever.
I mean, I did all the legwork. This isn't about me.
I shot all the video.
Well, I mean, technically, there was other people involved.
Let's not get into that.
But yeah, I mean, I would say that most of the legwork, most of the campaigning, most of the tour stops. Mm-hmm. I had to do so. Yeah, it's a big
Iowa
win
caucuses and all that.
Right, and all of I was the one in front of the cameras talking about abortion.
George pestered Joe Harris and Joe Castiglione. I pestered Joe Castiglione. Joe Castiglione was so ready to be done with me and George because he wanted it known that it wasn't his decision, and he was very adamant about that the entire time. He told both of us when we had asked about it, it was kind of like, hey, go ask the university. My hands are tied. Like, I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah, and that's when I started emailing the university about it. And
FOI request and all that.
Yeah, I was requesting things. So I don't know, maybe I feel like I should get some credit.
You should get some credit.
I start
Mr.
banging
Credit
on the
Hog
door.
over here.
No, I mean, Eddie, I will say, obviously it started out as a bit when Eddie did that because I was in school when it happened, but I do think it turned into people started to realize that the tailgating scene was not what it needed to be.
Right.
Yeah. And
and it was the first time around when they announced that they were going to have all this private tailgating, yet Lindsey Street was like they came out with that map that had everything zoned where you could tailgate, and it was just very apparent like we don't want you anywhere near Lindsey. Like, it had been zoned off.
It makes it even a bigger bullshit deal that they were hiding behind this idea that it was going to be unsafe for people on Saturdays.
Yeah, I mean, look, there used to be a parking lot right where the University College, is it University College? Is that what they call that?
So, residential
college.
Yeah.
But so it was a lot easier. You could just pull up your truck, you could dump all your crap out, and there was a parking lot behind there for people to straggle around and beers and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, those became David Boren's crowning achievement, building the residential colleges. Eddie was even there when RJ got poked in the chest by David Boren for questioning a report that I had on Sooner Scoop. But that was
come
his
to find out, he probably wanted to do more than just poke. Allegedly.
Anyway.
Allegedly. I should say that 3 more times just to make sure. Yeah. Allegedly.
He's still alive. I think he still has. He was a lawyer. He could waste his time just suing
I might get Epsteined.
Anyway, but yeah, there's plenty of room there. I mean, all they have to do is fence off a little bit, don't go beyond this area, but to the sidewalk and to the street. I mean, if you block off that street, it's plenty of room.
People don't live there anyways. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Is I mean, I'm sure
cross.
it's probably more full now because you knock down one of the towers. You got to put the kids somewhere.
Yeah.
But I don't. It was all stupid.
It was, but it truly and like you said, George, it started out majorly as a bit, but
From the
think
brain
that
of Eddie Radosevich.
yeah, I do think that it comes down to a point where you're bringing everybody in on game days, and you're bringing people in from Alabama, you're bringing people in from Tennessee over the next couple of years with the move to the SEC. You're bringing in recruits, and they all enter through that south end zone. And I think it's about presentation. It's about
the Champions Walk is going to be awesome now.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
And I mean, it was cool before, but it's going to be just flat out awesome.
I don't think it's a coincidence that this happens with Brent Venables as the head coach. I think Brent had
I don't think that's it. I
don't know, because it seems like he was pushing for this.
To me, I think when they started taking the trips to the SEC, realizing how much bigger a game day atmosphere people had, I think that woke a lot of people up. I mean, they're talking about leveling Campus Corner and rebuilding it to impress people for the SEC.
And they need to. The infrastructure around here is terrible. I'm talking about bars. I'm talking about stuff south of here that and I mean, that this is another endeavor, but like the contract that they have with Bud Light where they have the gates up and stuff and you can't even walk through Campus Corner anymore.
It's those guys basically holding everyone hostage for $60,000 a year. I'm told.
There's 3 people that feel like they need to make decisions around here. Well, it's over for them, not just their decision making, their lives.
I like our landlord.
I don't know.
Eddie's fired up today.
No, that's good. I mean, no, I think everyone would agree. Campus Corner is not as good as it could be.
It's dead.
Yeah,
it is dead. Campus Corner is dead from what it used to be.
But here's the thing, though. Here's what you have to realize. Was Campus Corner made for anything other than undergrads? Everybody still experiences Campus Corner the way we did.
No, they don't. There's
not
enough bars.
Yeah, when I went out this last
you guys had
May,
7. We had brothers back in my day.
We had
I had
brothers.
I had brothers. And Chimmy's.
Was
great.
There were other places other than, and I know that there's a lot of people that love Logie's, and I think it's a great bar, but at the same time, it's like, you need more spots.
Well, if Logie's is the best bar, and I like Logie's a lot, but if Logie's is the best place to go,
I'm all the way down to when kids come in on unofficial visits and stuff. It's just different from what it used to be, and I think that the presentation could be much better if everybody just worked for a central cause of making it better. But there are people we've talked about this before. I remember back in 2010, 2011, they wanted to level some stuff around here and build new bars and build apartments and get people back into the Campus Corner feel of things. And it was turned down because they didn't want to cover up a chapel on a church. That's just
that was the parking
ridiculous.
garage thing too.
Yeah, it would have been awesome.
It is. If you're not used to coming to Campus Corner, you don't know what the hell to do for parking, and now you got to go to those machines and get a ticket and put it on your car.
I've seen multiple people.
And parking enforcement, they're terrorists.
Giving the bird to all the meters out there because you can't figure out how to use them.
I know, it's just like people will stand out in front of our office like they're discovering tools and as apes for the first time.
Which I don't understand because it's always pretty simple. You just put the money in the machine,
the
right?
card readers don't work very well.
It's the card reader stuff.
Yeah. Anyway,
I guess I'm one of the only people around that carry around loose change to use for a meter if needed.
You can't do that anymore.
Yeah, you can.
They don't take change.
The ones out here, the ones straight in front, those probably are cards.
The ones further down, I don't
are they
think
card
you can.
only?
You just have to punch in your. You got to put in. You got to know your license plate and all that crap. So you go do it, and then you have to run back to your car, and make sure. Okay, is this my license plate? Then you got to go back.
Nobody ever remembers the license plate number. I have no idea what mine is.
So anyway, moving on to bigger and better things.
It is a big win, though.
Big win.
It's a big win to get Lindsey Street back going. And
now, will you go over there before the first game?
No, probably not. Well, maybe before the first game, but
just drape yourself in the flag, and
I mean, it'll be bumping at 11 a.m., which is a different story in and of itself.
By the way, you need your flags. Go SoonerScoopStore.com. Get yourself these fantastic flags. You've seen them on our YouTube channel behind Eddie and George. Also, shirts right now. Use that promo code We Did It, and you'll get 20% off your Lindsey Street gear. So
yeah, we're running out of shirts.
It's going fast. So it's only while supplies last. They're going fast. They've gone fast in the past, and I know we've gotten orders since we've been sitting here. So.
Yeah, good. All
All right. So I know we had a YouTube video on the recruiting situation, but Josh, there's just been, and I know you guys said last night on the YouTube show, let's move on, but I guess we just need to revisit this. We don't need to, live it all, 30-minute version of it. We already did that, but Josh, after all the dust is settled, anything of note that really stands out to you about the Williams-Nwaneri situation? I mean, obviously, addressing the Georgia thing is what most fans are up in arms. I know I got an email mad at you wanting me to do something because you didn't know that OU wasn't even second. And
I'm mad at me too.
I ignored that person. So
we can empathize together. That person can send me angry emails. That's fine. I think that those are the two lingering conversation points. The reality that he said he chose, Missouri over Georgia, and talking to some sources, I think that surprised everybody. This isn't just, myself and some other reporters being caught off guard. That wasn't an answer that Oklahoma expected. And again, I know people say, oh, well, you're just listening to the Oklahoma sources. This is what Tennessee thought. This is what Missouri thought. Everybody other than Georgia. Georgia is the only place that thought thought that Georgia was in the top two of this recruitment. Now, there is a piece that I think is interesting, and it's something I've seen brought up, that perhaps this was about that there was a presentation of Oklahoma and Tennessee being up in that chase to continue to push Missouri's NIL offer, to continue to up that number and get that running, because Georgia was very upfront. They weren't going to even try to compete on the NIL front. So maybe that was the deal, where it just got to a number where even Williams had to say, okay, I like Georgia, I like what they have to offer, but I've got to do what's best for my family here and pick Missouri. That's the only way that it can kind of make sense to me. And work on both sides, but I don't see that. And then the whole situation with Jamar Mosey apparently being told 2 weeks ago, and I get, people can get mad at him. He's got to keep his word to Eli Drinkwitz. Like, that just has to be the case. So, like I said, I think those are the two things that OU fans are kind of left lingering with, and we'll have to see. I don't have any anticipation that Oklahoma is going to walk away from this recruitment.
But then you also have the Missouri state law of September 1st, getting NIL. I guess there's nothing to say that the kid couldn't just walk away from that deal. I mean, you sign a contract, you leave the school. I mean, you want outs in the contract too. Like, if you transfer, you quit, we're not going to pay you anything anymore. So, I mean, I guess he could still walk away from it, even though that date is there, kind of, that people are paying attention to.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, that it's a little ambiguous in the letter of the law. And again, I'm Sooner Scoop legal expert here, is far from what I can claim to be. But reading that law, it just says a contract with the school, or some sort of official documentation, which everybody I think initially assumed meant his national letter of intent. But there is the financial aid agreement that a lot of guys, I think Trevor Lawrence, one of the first guys we really remember signing that. And it and really it was used largely to open communication, because it takes down a lot of they can only contact a player once a week. Clemson did it so that they could talk to Trevor Lawrence as often as they wanted to.
Oh, you did it back in the day with Dorial Green Beckham, because remember that day when we all heard he was in town, and that was Eddie's got famous for hiding behind the bushes, and we had him, actually purposefully shoot from behind the bushes.
Yeah.
And people thought it was
Cal Gundy and Jay Norvell.
Jay Norvell, yeah. And we literally ran up to his car, and we're like, how is this happening? Like, this is supposed to be illegal. But he signed a financial aid document that meant that the dead period didn't count, or didn't have effect or whatever.
And you guys seem to remember it that way. I thought that all happened during his transfer period when he was leaving Missouri.
It did. He was coming down here.
Okay, yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying, though. But that okay.
It was a non-contact.
Because obviously the transfer rules are,
It was a non-contact
you're right.
session or whatever, period. And because he signed that, it let him do stuff that other kids couldn't do. And it's, like you said, that's become more and more common now.
Yeah, and as we talked about back then, Kerry, the thing that people misunderstand about this is Missouri can, like through their NIL and through the way that state law is written, if that is a valid and binding agreement, then they can pay him NIL, starting on September 1st. The problem with that is it doesn't bind him to the University of Missouri, so they can
until
pay
he
him
signs the LOI,
whatever ungodly number. Yeah. And then he could still sign with Georgia or Oklahoma or wherever else his heart may desire.
Just take a bunch of money from Missouri and then sign with somebody else.
That agreement is not legally binding for the player to the school.
We're joking about it, but there will be people out there that do something like that.
Oh, it's
that
coming.
really screw over a school
Yep.
by taking money from them, knowing they're never going to spend a day on campus.
Yeah.
Like those are like
That's
the
coming.
next steps of NIL that I don't even think the NCAA, they'll be so late to react to something like that.
They'll be caught off guard completely.
And they'll say, well, we just never thought that something like this would happen. When in reality, everybody's saying that it's going to happen. Everybody knows it's going to happen.
They're going to have like a Hawaii rule for Missouri where like you have to remember that, Josh, like they made a rule like you have to have legitimate interest in going to Hawaii. You can't just take an official visit to Hawaii. Just screwing around. They're going to have like Missouri, and this is on the legislators because they put this thing in place. But yeah, you're right. I guarantee there's going to be guys that are opportunists or they're trainers or they're handlers or whatever. They're going to say, okay, let's start the negotiation. And once they get to the right number, they'll say, okay, we commit to you, knowing that they're still going to be talking to every school out there.
Well, and that's the whole deal. Like, I mean, I hate to take up for the NCAA here, but this isn't the NCAA is going to say, no, your dumbasses did this. Like you made these rules where you took the power away from us, and this is what you're going to get. And it's legislators trying to win points with the universities and with the fans in their own state. All the voters. I get why they did it. Like I understand, but this is the backside to that. This is the stuff that you didn't think about, because they just wanted to rush these laws through, and Missouri wanted to stay competitive with Arkansas and Oklahoma and some of the other states that have passed these kind of pretty broad NIL laws.
Well, and the other part of it is, when are kids or their representatives going to start demanding, okay, I will sign with you, but I want a 4-year guarantee of payment regardless of where I end up my college career. And I think you'll have lawsuits, people suing universities over this stuff. I mean, this thing is just getting started in terms of you've got to, what's the saying? You don't wish for, or you don't always want what you wish for, or whatever. I mean, like,
be careful what you wish for.
Be careful what you wish for. Yeah. I mean, exactly.
Yeah.
Like you're putting yourself in a terrible position if you're a university with some of these state laws.
Well, and because the universities also, they don't want to get into the legal, they don't want to start suing players because they know what that looks like.
Yeah,
You're chasing around the little high school kid who didn't do what you wanted to do in recruiting, and now the next kid's going to see that and say, I'm not even messing with those guys because they're going to sue me if it doesn't go their way. Even if that's not a fair representation of what happened, that's the general assumption because the schools will be made out to be the boogeyman.
I guess it is a situation, though, that this has been happening for a long time. We just know about it more probably because the money is out there.
Well, I think we'd all be,
like people dropping bags of cash. Obviously, like you're never going to get that money back if a kid that ends up somewhere else. Like
but even
Tennessee.
the Nico stuff at Tennessee, and then the kid at Florida. I mean, the quarterback.
This is definitely much bigger money, right?
I don't know. Wasn't Nico's like $8 million or something?
Well, I'm just saying in terms of what today's NIL landscape is probably much more than a couple thousand that whoever would get back in 1970, whatever.
yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Well, and it's relative too, because it's not just the aspect of, okay, it's a lot more money. There's less to go around. Like 5,000 or 10,000 for a corner, 25 years ago. Okay, fine. But nobody was making $1 million.
Well, think about
now
it.
It's just like the numbers have just grown.
Josh, think about it. I mean, I think we all probably have seen Pony Excess. Like, it was such a scandal that Eric Dickerson got a car. Like, that's the most anybody got paid was a vehicle. Like, now you're talking about being able not just buy a house, but a luxury house. I mean, You're talking about being able to buy a second house.
For some people, this is, generational wealth.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about setting up
well,
not just
generational
himself.
wealth is generational wealth
Sure.
for any people.
Well, for some people, it might be.
I want
different.
to
But
say,
you know what I mean.
And as an ode to one of our sponsors, I'm pretty sure Ed Eskridge, in order to land Williams Nwaneri, would donate a car to that recruitment. I feel confident.
I think Ed
that
would.
is something
Yeah.
he would. Yeah. So, but now, I mean, that's peanuts, man. It's nothing compared to. I mean, I said it before, and I think most people kind of get it. I mean, that there's a very real possibility Williams Nwaneri clears more, roughly $3 million in his time at Missouri. That's an
insane.
absurd number for one player.
Yeah,
it's just crazy. And I it's one of those things where I get it from both sides. Like, I get the argument to, well, you got to get those guys to make the difference and blah blah. I also get at the same time what that can do to a locker room when you have a bunch of kind of veteran guys that aren't, A, let's just be honest, aren't worth that, and B, aren't ever going to make that. And they've got to accept that this young kid who has a world of talent, I'm not trying to shoot him down at all, but that's a real poison pill if you're not real careful about it.
Josh, that kind of leads into a question that I've been getting quite a bit lately that I really don't know the answer to in terms of you're Oklahoma now. You were going to allocate X amount of money towards a William Nwaneri. Do you go back to a David Stone? Do you go back to a Nigel Smith, a Dominic McKinley, and say, hey, we actually have a little bit more we would like to present to you in terms of an NIL offer? And, that's a really fascinating question now is in terms of that. And then on top of, how much do coaches go into a position meeting and say, and I don't know if any of us know this, and say, we have X amount of money for this position. Are they just allocated with, you get this amount for this position and you have to start almost working a salary almost for all of these guys through NIL?
I'm sure
I don't
some
think it
staff
works like
do,
that.
but I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't see Brent really getting into that. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's more of a
Less you know, the more you know.
They
Yeah.
go, hey, we got to get this amount of money, and they go to whoever.
Right.
Yeah,
and
I think
say-
it might be it's like getting into a bidding war.
Yep.
It's like
Yeah.
hearing what Missouri was offering Nwaneri and saying, if we want to be in the game, we have to be here.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying
Yeah.
that goes
And-
through Brent, but it goes through someone.
Because when I was talking to people and, kind of saying, wow, I can't believe that Missouri's offering this type of money, I think that they were blown away by the amount. And obviously for a semester of school, $750 or whatever it was, it's insane almost. And I think that goes back to what we talked about on the podcast a couple weeks ago, just in terms of is the payout even worth it, even getting him to get to campus? Are you paying enough to is it just completely worth it to spend that type of money? And what are you getting out of it? I almost think that for Missouri too, sure, he's a Kansas City guy. It's a big deal getting Williams Nwaneri, the football player, but the press that comes with it, the labeling of we have the number one player in the country committed to our school, that in itself might be worth $250. I don't know what the number is.
I have another question I wanted to get to, but all this recruiting talk brought to you by Enjoy Vision, our fresh perspective look around, which we've been doing. And if anybody can tell by looking at the duffel bag being carried out by Williams Nwaneri how much money he's making, it's probably Eddie Radosevich, because we all know he has perfect vision.
I could see it all the way from Columbus, and I could see the stank face of douchebag Eli Drinkowicz. Enjoy Vision is the best laser vision center in Oklahoma City. It's not even close. The combination... You have a problem, George?
No.
The combination of mind-blowing technology... Are you a Missouri informant? Is that where you wanted to go to journalism school?
Possibly.
I can see that smirk on your face. Mind-blowing technology, experienced eyeball surgeons, and exceptional patient care was life-changing for me. What they're doing for the Unofficial 40 listener, they're giving out $400 for LASIK. So all you got to do is go to enjoyvisionwithme.com, use promo code U40. That is for any Unofficial 40 listener that is interested in LASIK surgery, which was very easy. They give you a couple volumes. You're out of there in a couple hours with perfect vision.
Actually,
You
they
can
gave
be
you one, but you
just
stole
like
another
me.
one.
Well, I sweet talked the nurse, and God love her. Enjoy Vision, NJOY, withme.com. Use promo code U40. Enjoy Vision. This is where you LASIK.
By the way, I believe in truth in advertising. What you said was that they'll give you $400. That's $400 off. They're not. You don't get to get the LASIK and $400.
It would be cool if they gave you $400, and you could use that.
Well, essentially, they
for your
do give
LASIK
you
vision.
$400 off, so you're
Right.
saving $400.
Fair. Yes,
There we go.
$400 off LASIK.
Now, are you leaving?
I thought you were
going to
say
be a
you
TV
used
star.
Well,
400
Bob's
on
going
the
to come
meds.
sit down. I'm doing the media tour, okay?
All right. No, Josh, I did want to ask you this question because I think in the age of NIL, it's interesting, and I know that OU has wanted to have their soul mission team more involved in some of the things with recruiting, and maybe that's just on campus, but there are still limits on who can actually recruit players, right? Like call them, talk to them. I mean, you still have to have your official coaches, your assistants are the only ones that are allowed to talk to players, right? Off of campus.
Well, I think say off of campus, yeah, there are some stipulations. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Caleb Kelly, or just because you're talking about the soul mission, like I believe he can make that call. But if that kid picks up the phone, that's the only call that Oklahoma can make that week. Like for those that don't know the rules. So I'm about 85% sure that's right. But again, it's still down to that same old rule of there's one phone contact per week in the open period. So that's where it gets shaky. Because you'd love to have Caleb Kelly in contact with those guys, but it's more of, hey, as you're hanging up with Ted Roof, give Caleb a call this week. I think that's the way you kind of work around that.
Or I'm going to hand the phone over to this guy.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. There's ways to do it. But yeah, so I think that is that's an interesting aspect of this whole thing. And I think that was something that, it's something that's worked with a lot of kids. I think maybe at times there has been a assumption that was maybe going to be a bigger piece for a couple of these recruitments. I know Casey Poe was one I talked about a lot that really loved this whole soul program and how involved they were. And I think it maybe has surprised a few people that it hasn't quite been the closing punch that they thought it was going to be. And I don't know if that's still them just kind of getting the whole thing set up exactly the way they want it to, or if kids are just like anybody else and they want to see a little success on the field and then they can, kind of buy more easily into the bells and whistles.
Now, Josh, we're now 2 days removed from the decision. I know we're not worried about David Stone, who's expected to announce August 26th. But do you think – I don't think spooked is the right word. But do you think the OU coaches, the OU staff has a better idea of what actually happened with Williams and where there was a disconnect?
I haven't really talked to anybody about it in like the last 24 hours. I will say in the immediate aftermath, there was genuine surprise. And I don't mean so much that he picked Missouri. They knew that was a possibility. They knew that's the hill they were fighting against. I think to steal a phrase from our old buddy Jeff Ketchum, I think the Georgia, was runner-up thing was kind of a gut punch. I think they felt like they were under the impression it was them or Missouri, and it surprised them a little bit. So now what I think is interesting, and we kind of talked around it a little bit a second ago, is does this just become a deal where Oklahoma says, okay, tough loss, but we're going to go allocate a little more NIL money. We've got all this that we were ready to kick into Williams, but now we can give a little to Nigel Smith. We can give a little more to Danny Okoye, a little more to David Stone, a little more to Dominic McKinley. And if I'm talking to OU fans, if you're in your right mind at all, you'll trade those four for Williams and Nwaneri 8 days a week. Like that's not even a question. You need the numbers, which is what I said about the Missouri thing that didn't make any sense to me. Go and get 5, 6, 7 players for Missouri instead of this one guy that's just not going to be the difference in you getting into an SEC championship game. Like one guy's just not going to do it. So I think that's the interesting idea, and it'll be interesting because I know Oklahoma wants to continue to recruit Williams Nwaneri. So at the end of the day, they're going to have to find that, whatever the offer was to make it competitive, they're going to still have to have that available if they want to try and sign him come December. what we'll see. To me, I feel like nothing's really going to change on Williams there. If he bought into Eli Drinkwitz and that situation, what's going to change? I mean, say it goes badly, and they fire him and hire somebody new. Well, Eli's gone. The money's still here. The location's still here. And, if you bought into what Eli Drinkwitz was selling after 3 years of nothing, what does it change if a new guy comes in and starts selling his promises? If anything, he's got a clean slate. So I would read that as I'm going to pivot to those four and do everything I can with NIL and recruiting and the relationships to sell those four guys on joining the two I've already got committed.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things came up after that whole deal in terms of the future, and I think all of us, none of us believe in Eli Drinkwitz that he's the solution at Missouri. Sorry, George.
I don't. To be very
Stop
clear,
it! Stop it!
I do not.
I'm not affiliated with him.
So it is one of those deals. Like, does it open back up someday? And I gotta say, like, I'll just flat out mention names. I don't care. I mean, I feel bad, like, for Parker Thune because he just seems to be taking this so hard, and I've seen some of the tweets that people have shared with me and things. He did kind of bring that on himself, but I gotta say, I've seen it happen twice now where people are wrong on commitments and they start blaming other people, and that shit's got to stop. Like, trainers, parents, that's terrible. You can't do that. I know what it means to break news. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I think I've broken as much news as an OU beat writer as anybody that's ever done it. I know how to get stories, to how to be correct on a story. The Dalen Smothers things, like, I had someone tell me that he had left the team. I didn't report it because I didn't have enough information. It was a very good source, but it was one source. And I told you guys, like, I need to know how DeMarco feels about this. Is he going to go back and try and get him? So, I mean, sometimes things just don't smell right. And you have to have the chops as a reporter to determine what is bullshit and what is not. What is legitimate. And when you put your name on something and it goes out into the ether, you're going to question yourself. No matter how hard or how well you source something, you're going to question it. And when it comes back and you get burned, it's on you. It's on you to get that you got burned. You didn't check with someone that you need to check. This bullshit of blaming and putting it on trainers and putting it on parents, that shit has got to stop. You're making the entire industry look like idiots, and you're making it harder on Oklahoma to recruit kids because of this shit. So just stop. I feel bad for you, kid, that you were wrong and you doubled down and you were wrong again. But my God, grow up. Stop blaming other people. That's the most that I've ever gone after somebody, ever, on anything. But I've seen it happen now twice from the same place, and it infuriates me.
Well, because that makes it hard for people to trust us. Like, well, like what are these guys going to throw us under the bus? Blah blah blah. And I don't want to get into individuals, that kind of stuff. But you just, man, I don't know. And the thing is, as you look back, like even in the immediate aftermath, there were red flags. The canceling of the trip because he got grounded or whatever, and all the rumors that he was actually in Columbia, Missouri that day. I still don't know if he was or wasn't, but there is enough there to make you doubt how that played out, like to make you doubt whether that happened or it didn't happen or whatever. And I know people will say, oh, the strong sources were wrong on plenty of this. So, we just don't know. And then he immediately takes the trip to Oregon. There was the conversation that, and I think it's been confirmed by Jamar Mosey, that largely the family shut down any recruiting talk outside of the family over the last 2 weeks. There's just red flags there because all we'd heard is the family wants him at Missouri. The family wants him at Missouri. And then over the last couple of weeks, there's this huge pivot in his whole situation. He clearly, he told our old buddy Gabe DeArmond at Power Mizzou that he had committed 2 weeks before. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that happened there that you're like, you don't have to work that hard to look back and say, okay, I missed this sign. I missed this. I should have done that. And that's me too. Like, I'm not singling anybody out here. Like I jumped off the train the night before because I just knew, I talked to enough people. It wasn't going to be Oklahoma, but at the same time, I should have seen it before. Like I'm not bagging on anybody else. Like that's as much my miss as anybody else's.
It's a little bit like sometimes it also, and I'm not saying that Nwaneri is this way, but in some of those misses that you've had, throughout your career, and there's not a ton of them, but like most of those kids end up kind of being flakes that are sending mixed messages and, making it hard to tell what they're going to do. I think maybe Tristan Lee's about the most normal person that, tripped you up a little bit, or and I think that was just let's just say what it was, lying to coaches.
Exactly.
I mean,
right.
Yeah.
If you have the stones to lie to coaches, it usually says something about you and your character and your ability to be great as an athlete. Like if you're going to lie to a coach, you're probably not going to work as hard as other people.
I've said it before, but I've never seen such unanimity. I think that's right.
That's right.
Between coaching staffs as the reaction to Tristan Lee. He had told multiple coaching staffs he was coming, and then he wasn't going to sign early, and then he signs with Clemson, doesn't give anyone a heads up. Like there were people and the worst part was, even if his brother had been the player that Tristan is, he screwed his brother, because there were people that like, I'll never recruit his little brother just because I can't trust anything I'm told.
Yeah. All right.
You just can't deal that way.
I think it's time to move on. I think we've addressed that enough. And like I said, I'm not trying to make this personal with anybody, but yeah, that just, you want to get me all riled up. You can when you start hurting the business, basically.
I will say just very quickly that if the OU beat ever breaks out into an Anchorman style fight, where they have all the different groups, I'll take Sooner Scoop any day of the week.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I will.
Yeah.
I'll have to take timeouts, to catch my breath more than the rest of you. Anyway, by the way, one thing that makes me happy to think about is restaurant quality shrimp at home. Primeshrimp.com. Go check them out. Great sponsors of the podcast. PRIME shrimp.com. You can get 25% off your entire order of $50 or more just using that promo code U40. They've got all the different varieties of shrimp. If you like more of the New Orleans style, they've got the New Orleans barbecue. They've got the Cajun shrimp boil. They've got their signature seasoned French Quarter Alfredo. Just go to the website, primeshrimp.com. Don't worry about all those DoorDash fees or Grubhub fees. It's going to be shipping fees that you're going to be taking here. But you're going to be at home in 10 minutes, boiled water, drop it in. You'll have a restaurant-quality meal. Put it with some rice or maybe some grits or whatever you want with your shrimp, even quinoa for you sensitive folks. I think there's something more sensitive than quinoa, though, now. I don't know what that would be. I haven't. Eddie likes that kava place. I've never been there. Have you ever been there, George?
Never been there.
Used to be that Greek place.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
No, anyway. But go to primeshrimp.com, and you won't have to get quinoa if you don't want it with your shrimp. So 25% off. Use that promo code U40 off your first order of $50 or more. All right, Bob is here. Eddie is out being a star. And you haven't really had a chance to give your impressions of camp this week. I know you're welcome to do a YouTube video anytime you want, by the way.
I appreciate it. It's really hard to work around the schedule.
It is. We kind of just start falling asleep about 4:00 in the office, especially today. I mean, everybody's dragging ass today. Understandable. I certainly was this morning. But I mean, you've seen what, 4 practices now, 3, and obviously it gets less exciting the more you go out there, I think.
Which is funny.
Yeah, which is funny, but I don't know what were your takeaways? Did you spend any time looking at one group over the other yesterday?
The final day, Monday, I spent more time looking at the receivers and tight ends and just sort of getting that scary feeling that if Austin Stogner isn't who OU needs him to be, what's going to happen to that room? Like, who can you really count on? How much will Jeff Lebby just have to change the offense if Stogner cannot produce at a very high level? And the expectations for him seem just astronomical. Like, you need to be Braden Willis. Like, we can't exist as a position group if you're not as good as what Braden was last year. And I feel that's a lot for Stog to put to.
But
to
he's
put
not,
on his
though.
back.
He's not.
Exactly. So
I mean, we could say that, right? He's not Braden Willis.
He hasn't been, and there's nothing to suggest that now he'll make that leap. He'll make a leap, but I don't know he can make the Braden Willis type of leap. And if he doesn't, then where you go from that room? And then the other thing would be offensive line. It's clearly sounds like it's better than what we first thought, and that comes from Brent Venables, comes from Jackson Arnold, comes from other offensive players. I don't know what that means about defensive line, but that offensive line sounds like they had a really nice scrimmage Saturday, and perhaps it won't take till September or that first loss for Bill Beatenbow to really feel confident in those five guys.
You mentioned Jackson Arnold. Got a chance to talk with him the other day. I don't know if you were over there with him or not. I think the one thing, George, like throughout camp that really strikes me is like anytime someone gets an opportunity to bring up Jackson Arnold, they love talking about Jackson Arnold. I mean, and no one's taken away from Dylan Gabriel, but I think some of that is he's been really impressive. The other thing is, like, we're not going to have to go through a Davis Bevel situation this year, no matter what happens.
Yeah, and you can tell just talking to Jackson, he's just very intelligent. His football IQ is very high, and he's just a guy that I think you watch him throw the ball, and you can see the skill set. I mean, it's just different.
He already looks like a college quarterback.
Yeah, and it's cliche to say, but the ball does come out of his hand differently. But
did you watch Hard Knocks last night?
I didn't, but I saw some of the clips of the Magic show that they.
Oh God, that was terrible. No, but the way that they were talking about the way the ball comes out of Aaron Rodgers' hand and the sound it makes, like like everyone in the Jets was like, I've never heard that sound before. I don't know what that sound is, but it's kind of like when you see Jackson Arnold throw it. It's not about a sound, but it's just a way he looks, his delivery, the fact that he's a big guy. It's just you're like, okay, that guy's pretty special as a thrower.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting.
I'm not comparing him to Aaron Rodgers.
Right. And he's got some growing to do. I think that his decision making is probably still in a process. I know yesterday at practice, Peyton Bowen picked him off, and Peyton Bowen talked about that. And Peyton Bowen, by the way, is having an incredible camp. It sounds like I think he's going to end up on the field in some fashion. But yeah, I think there's just an excitement of having somebody behind Dylan Gabriel this year if Dylan were to go down or if Dylan doesn't play great. I think that gives people, and especially those players, a little bit more of a confidence boost, I would say.
And what was nice about Monday, that last 10 minutes we were out there, we actually got to see Dylan and Jackson actually throw the ball, not just these little rollout, little 5-yard outs. They were chunking it downfield, and you could actually, for the first time, get an idea, this is why they talk about Jackson Arnold the way that they do.
It's
Hold on a second.
Yeah,
Josh, Bob just crapped on drills where you get to see people move their feet. I don't think we can stand for that at Sooner Scoop. I enjoy watching the rollout routes and seeing how they throw on the move. Like I would rather watch that than see a guy chunk the ball deep all day. I mean, we know they can throw it deep.
Well, we've seen the rollout the first two days,
and it's great every
I want
time.
to see something different.
It's
and I
great
did.
every time. Sorry, go ahead, George.
I was just going to say when Jackson throws it, I'm more impressed by the throws where it's across the field and maybe it's a 5-yard out on the opposite hash. Those are the throws that I'm like, okay, because I think Dylan throws a really good deep ball.
He does.
He's usually on the money on some of those. It's those,
but a deep out it shows the difference between the two.
Yeah, and it's the velocity on it, the placement. It's just a little bit different from him, and so. I think it's more about grasping the playbook for him and just learning those decision-making, understanding the speed is different. Even the throw, I mean, they put out the clip that Peyton Bowen intercepted him yesterday, and you don't even see the receiver in the area. And I think Peyton came across the field to make that play. So just adjusting to those sorts of things is where he's going to have the biggest learning curve.
Yeah, and like I said, though, no one's pushing the button of he may be the best guy. No one's saying anything close to that. It's just that you can sense the excitement, no matter who you're talking to, whether it's players or coaches. They don't hold back in how impressed they've been. Now, you mentioned wide receivers. I think probably this last week, the one guy that we've heard the most about and seen, we did talk to him this week, but it's pretty clear Andrell Anthony is making a big jump in camp.
Yeah, he caught a couple touchdown passes in the scrimmage on Saturday. He's running with the first team. He's just a guy that I think has a ton of speed, and so he's going to be able to replace some of what Marvin did, which is stretching that defense, making those plays down the field. It's going to be interesting to see how they use him because I know everybody points to the stats at Michigan, and they weren't great, but I think that's somewhat a product of Michigan runs a little bit of a different offense. Obviously, they run the ball a lot. Their quarterback plays a little bit different. So I don't know why he wasn't super productive at Michigan. I think that's part of it, but he's certainly a guy that I think is starting to emerge. The other one that I'll mention, and we've talked about him a lot, but it sounds like Jaquez Petaway, they had another scrimmage today. I think he had a pretty good day.
Yeah, I mean, Bob, you said you were over there watching wide receivers. I think with Petaway, I've been surprised at how physical he is for a true freshman.
Yeah, and that was from that very first Friday when we got to watch him. Like, wow, that's his upper body strength for a true freshman. That's going to work. That's going to be okay. That period of adjustment isn't going to be nearly as long as what I first thought. And it's been nice to sort of see some of those guys emerge because, they're not all going to be great. Like, some of them are going to rise, some are going to fall to, they're going to take a step back, but you're getting an idea of why they went after Petaway as hard as they did. And to give credit to Petaway, going from Cale Gundy, L.D. Washington, Emmett Jones, like he stuck with this process 100% of the way, and it sounds like it's going to pay off for all parties involved.
Josh, is that surprising to you, watching him out of high school in Petaway, that he appears to be college ready as a freshman, even and that's without him being in the spring. So I mean, he wasn't a mid-semester guy.
Yeah, that's what shocks me. If he had showed up in the spring, I thought he was a guy that maybe could have fought for the starting role. Like I really was a believer in his ability, but as a guy, I mean, comes from a program that, not a big time program there at Langham Creek, but has lots of speed, but there wasn't a lot of refinement to his game. But at the same time, when I saw him, the thing that impressed me the most was just he isn't one of those receivers that's like aloof and kind of doing his own thing and, catch a touchdown pass and then doesn't. He was very engaged in the game and like kind of talking with his quarterback and figuring out how they want to do stuff. So he's clearly a guy that thinks the game. And so it doesn't surprise me that he's picking up on that aspect. But it did surprise me when you guys talked about like his size being better than you anticipated it being, because I thought if anything was going to slow him down, it was just going to be corners getting physical with him. An experienced guy like Woody Washington's going to shove him around and make him, get him off his routes and that kind of stuff. But it sounds like he's doing that pretty well. And if that's everything else, I don't see a lot of ways that you keep him off the field with that receiver room having so many questions and his ceiling being as high as anybody on that roster right now.
It's unfair to say this. The comparison's unfair. But you got to realize when he came in as a freshman, I'll tell you who I'm talking about in a second. When he came in as a freshman, we all watched him out at practice. We were like, man, that kid looks pretty good. And he wasn't recruited that highly. But just the way they move a little bit, he reminds me of a really young Mark Clayton.
I could see that. Because, I mean, like I've told the story before, Mark was in my class my freshman year, was a slight guy. But you could always move. And that's the thing that I think sticks out.
I believe he redshirted when he was a freshman.
Mm-hmm. He did. Yeah. He did. Mm-hmm. The thing that sticks out to me, though, is how – because a lot of these guys are like the blinding speed. Like Brennan Thompson's very much this way, where Brennan is so incredibly fast, straight line.
And I've been surprised we haven't heard more about him in camp.
He's been banged up.
Well, I know I think so. He's had some injuries from everything I've heard. But with Petaway, he moves laterally pretty well. Like he's not a guy. I mean, he can stop. He's got some stop and start to his game. When a lot of these top end guys, they're just I don't know if they're tight hipped because of all the track stuff. Like they're just very north and south. But he's got more wiggle to his game than that. And again, if he can handle the physicality and can stay healthy and do all those things, he could be a kind of a wild card for this offense that I really didn't expect to be as ready as he seems to be.
You talked about it a lot in the YouTube stuff about the receivers and Anthony and all that. I just back to Stogner. I've always said this, and I just think it's whether or not I don't even care how he is athletically, but if he can develop a relationship with Dylan Gabriel, to me that's the biggest thing that matters. Like if Dylan Gabriel goes out there and it's 3rd and 5, and he trusts Drake Stoops, I think we know that if he can get Austin Stogner and Austin Stogner can come along to gain that trust, it would give him 2 really good options, in third medium. And I just think that that's his role. He has to gain Gabriel's trust more than he has to be a guy that's just beating people down the field.
And he's got to embrace it. Because I know you were one of his biggest critics when he was here the first time about being physical.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something he's mentioned. He's got to be more physical. It's something Jeff Levy mentioned Monday. I need him to have his conditioning up to go 80 to 85 plays, and he needs to be as physical as he's ever been. Because, that should be his role. You're not expecting him to beat you down the field, but when you need those tough catches or you need that red zone grab, that's got to be one of your main targets every single time. And so we'll see if he's made that type of mental leap too, to where he's okay with it, where he's embracing the contact that's going to inevitably come his way with his type of size, and you throw it over the middle.
What's up with Llewellyn?
I don't know. I heard you ask that the other day, and you didn't get a very good answer. Like, there was nothing reassuring about, he's going to be fine. He's coming along well.
He's out there,
yeah.
But it always feels like he's limited in a way, but we don't quite know if it's still the foot injury from before or is it something new. But, between Caden Helms being on crutches and Llewellyn, that's why it's like, if you're Blake Smith or Cade McIntyre, this is your moment.
Hampton Fay.
Hampton
Fay, Brent Venables went on, and, Brent's one of those guys that I think he could just go on about every single player, but he unprompted went on about Hampton. He was just asked about the tight end room, and he just talked about Hampton Fay for like a minute, and I was just like, okay, I guess that's a guy that's gonna play. And he's got good size. Now he played tight end some in high school, is that right, at Aledo, or did he play just quarterback? No, then he transferred, right?
He was a quarterback.
No, he did. I saw him play. He was playing with Jace McClellan and the receiver that went to Alabama that's now back at TCU,
JoJo Earl.
Yeah. And so, I remember you're like, it's a big old dude that can move around. Like, I didn't know who he was. He was just little. I think he was a sophomore at that point. And you're like, well, that's kind of interesting. But he's a good athlete. I don't know if he can play tight end because at that point, Aledo was just basically handed off to Jace McClellan and watch magic happen. So, but. Again, I can see what the thinking is. Guys that big and that long can absolutely play.
They just don't have bodies there, so those guys are gonna have to play. I mean, Blake Smith is the second tight end. He's gonna have to play, and
he needs to be better than Daniel Parker was last year. The room could be a mess in a hurry. And I think you're going to see more of them run 4 wide receivers and 1 tight end. Those type of sets. Go ahead, Josh. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, if Devon Mitchell could move 2 classes, is there much doubt he'd be in the 2 deep?
No, I don't think there's any doubt.
That room is, I would say that's one of the softer rooms I can remember. And I mean, I don't mean like soft and like they're not tough guys. I just mean like as far as there's not much there from a health standpoint and an experience standpoint. Like that's got to be one of the lesser rooms I can remember in my time covering Oklahoma.
And it's interesting because it didn't seem like they went too hard after guys in the portal at that position, did they?
They got Blake, and they like, all right, we're good.
And Stog, I mean, obviously.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I thought they would get one more, and because Smith wasn't even a scholarship guy, right? At A&M.
No, was he? I don't think he was. I'm pretty sure he wasn't. I need to look that up to be sure. But, yeah, I mean, guys, we've said it over and over again. I mean, all Oklahoma had to do was show Jake Roberts true interest. And Jake Roberts is on this roster right now. There's not much doubt in my mind. Jake's a kid I've known since high school. And, I won't say that he said that verbatim. But, we talked about stuff, and he definitely seemed interested.
By the way,
that would have – oh, go ahead.
No, finish your thought because I wanted to move on to a couple other things.
Sure. No, I was just going to say, I mean, and if you land Jake, the whole thing with Nate Roberts goes differently from the start. I think it's going to work out fine now, but, you're tied in for the next few years is probably pretty much handled between Devon Mitchell and Nate Roberts.
Deadsoxy, DeadSoxy.com. I want to get back to some recruiting stuff, but first I wanted to tell you about Deadsoxy. It's a great time. Brand new Crimson collection has been introduced. You got to go check them out. Boy, we are two and a half weeks away from the start of football. You want to make sure you have those socks on your feet, looking OU proud, and go check out the Crimson collection. Like I said, a lot of new, really cool socks in that collection. They did a great job designing them. And if you use the promo code SCOOP, you get 25% off your entire order, even if you get the packs, which are always discounted. So you get like the 4-pack or the 8-pack. You can still get your Sooner Scoop discount. So go to deadsoxy.com, DeadSoxy.com. We can't speak highly enough. I mean, no shows. I can never have enough of those. I keep ordering more. And they're great this time of year, especially when it's so hot. And then, like I said, when the season gets here, go check out that Crimson collection, and you'll be proud to wear them on game day, and your feet will feel better. So, deadsoxy.com, go check them out. Great sponsor of the pod. We appreciate their support. Okay, we haven't talked about recent commitments, Josh, since this started, and the Nate Roberts news, the decommitment from Notre Dame. So let's go over some of that stuff, and because there has been some good news. I know Nwaneri took away a lot of things that have been positive lately. And you've muted yourself.
I muted myself.
Yes.
Yep, got it fixed.
We can see it. We can see you mute yourself for the first time.
I know. Isn't that amazing? I will say, just as a quick plug here, if you haven't heard me talk about Nate Roberts or the Jaden Nickens decision, go subscribe to the YouTube feed, our Sooner Scoop YouTube feed, because we have talked about it there.
Yeah, just go to youtube.com/Sooner Scoop, and please subscribe, because we're putting out videos all over the place. Do we have some breaking news, or did your computer just break on you? Anyway, we're putting out all kinds of content. We're working on getting Bob's stuff straightened out as well. But George and Eddie have been going on there and doing exclusive shows just for the YouTube community. We've got the studio up and running. We'll even start having some more recruiting stuff with Josh. But go subscribe, youtube.com/Sooner Scoop. Hit that notification bell, and you'll find out every time we release something new.
Yeah. So, but with that said, we'll start with the decision of Jaden Nickens, the wide receiver from Millwood. Such a guy that Emmett Jones had made a focus since early in his arrival. We all know how special I've talked about that 2025 class is in Oklahoma. And Nickens is another guy. I mean, once they landed Grayson Harris and then they got Elijah Thomas, Emmett Jones can then start to go to these guys and say, hey, man, we're running out of spots. We might have 4. If you want one of these, you're going to have to move. And I think that's what happened here. And I know, Eddie and Bob were at his announcement, and he kind of talked about just coming back from a trip and kind of came to that decision. And that may well be how it played out or when it played out, but there's no question he knew that. I mean, there was a chance if Oklahoma was what he wanted, he was going to have to pull the trigger, and that's what he did. So I think, again, you're just seeing the impact of Emmett Jones there and what he brings to the recruiting table. And at the same time, this is a guy that, again, is 6'2", maybe around 6'3", really nice frame, super long, got a basketball background, so he's very good with spacing and understands how to create some room for his quarterback to work in. And I thought at camp showed a little more burst than I had seen from him previously, so I like what he brings to the table. And I just, with him, there's also the rebuilding of that relationship at Millwood, where I think Oklahoma had struggled there for a long time, where they really just hadn't had many wins. The other in-state story is obviously Nate Roberts decommitting from Notre Dame. That went public yesterday. I mentioned, the YouTube feed. We talked about that being a possibility in the Williams Nwaneri pod a couple of nights ago, that I thought that was on the horizon. And about 12 hours after we recorded that, it finally went public that he had decommitted from Notre Dame. I love where Oklahoma is. I think that's going to be a situation where Oklahoma won't let that slip away twice. And I think there was so much juggling on the Devon Mitchell situation, because Oklahoma's kind of waiting for him to make it clear and make it obvious that he was going to be part of 2024, and then they could turn their focus to Nate Roberts in 2025. They went ahead, did that, and, now it's clear those two don't have to compete for the same spot or do anything like that. And now Oklahoma can kind of really put their eggs in the basket of Nate Roberts. And they're working on some other tight ends. I don't know if in the right situation they might take two, because there's 2 or 3 that they're really, high on, that are very good players, have been to Oklahoma numerous times, that they might try and bring in another guy just to have another big, talented, athlete, which, what we were just describing in the tight end room, they could use more of those bodies in there, especially healthy ones. So, again, with him, I think it's a matter of when and not if. It's just going to be what his timeline is.
Josh, you mentioned Nate, and we were there. Jaden Nickens, he said he wanted Nate to be a part of the class, and Kevin Sperry was on hand for the commitment. We've seen the summer videos of Nate and Kevin all working out together. Was that as big of a factor as it feels like, or is that just happenstance?
Oh, I don't think there's any question. There's an impact there. Because, I mentioned it. I can't remember. I don't even remember when, but we were discussing something. And, I mean, it's not coincidental that almost every one of these guys that went to OU's camp and, caught from Kevin Sperry. I was going to say throw passes, but they're not throwing any passes. That just worked out with Kevin Sperry. Those guys are all almost committed at this point. Like there's very few exceptions amongst Oklahoma's top receiver options. So I think that is a tremendously good sign. And it's a sign of, what a lot of people said about Caleb Williams and said, about Spencer Rattler, like, oh, these guys are going to recruit. And then Kevin Sperry's doing more of that than either of those guys did. So I think that is interesting to note, that he is clearly a guy that, while he doesn't have this big brash personality, or even not even brash, just doesn't have he's not one of those guys where he walks into the room and he's there. Like, he doesn't have that kind of vibe to him. At the same time, guys clearly like him. Every recruit I talk to that's dealt with Kevin just raves about him. Like, oh, he's super low key. It's cool. Like, it's not a lot of pressure, but at the same time, he makes it clear, this is why I chose Oklahoma. I want you to come with me, kind of thing. So he walks that fine line, which I think gets overlooked sometimes by fans. They want every guy to be the raw recruiter, and that just pisses some guys off. They don't want to hear that crap all the time. They don't want to deal with it all the time. So there's a fine line to walk, and he seems like he does it really well.
It seems like we talk about this Hey, Josh, I'm back. It seems like
hey, buddy.
What's happening? We talk about this so much, but it is important, and I think it's because Brent brought it up from day one. Could things be going any better right now for Oklahoma in state, and especially when you take into account what this 2025 class is?
I don't think. All right, let me start over. I don't think so, and I think it is incredible how well the timing worked out for Oklahoma to really kind of, 2023, they were playing catch up. They were able to close in a few guys, Eric McCarty, that kind of stuff. 2024, it felt like they've really got their ducks in a row, even to the point of, landing some of these in-state guys to the preferred walk-on roles. The Liam Evans kid from Moore, Bergen Kaiser from Edmond Santa Fe. I mean, really, really good preferred walk-ons that have scholarship offers elsewhere are coming to Oklahoma. And then, you get Josh Iasosa from Edmond Santa Fe. I mean, it's not just that they're doing a good job landing elite guys. They've now got a relationship in state where you're getting less and less of these guys who are mad because they didn't know where Oklahoma stands. And where they stand with Oklahoma. And that's been a problem for years. We all know it. Oklahoma would try to pivot back to an in-state guy, and that guy was like, I haven't heard from you in 3 months. Like, we're not doing this. Like, I'm committed to wherever it may be, and I'm going to stick with that. But now you're seeing this where, okay, hey, look, man, this is our situation. This is where we are. Oklahoma just being very honest about what their situation is, and that trickles down to other guys who aren't in those situations. The Elijah Thomases and the Jaden Nickens that Oklahoma wants and wants badly, but they know, hey, these guys are shooting me straight. Like, I really am not going to have a spot if I mess around here for too long, or, they really do want me and I want to go ahead and commit. So let's get this done. So again, I think they've done, it's an amazing job. And I wrote a story probably a year ago about Brandon Hall being a big piece of that. Being a local Oklahoma guy, I think it mattered to him to be a good in-state recruiter, and it shows because he really has rebuilt a lot of these relationships in the state. And Oklahoma has been so much more present than they were in years past, and that includes dealing with trainers, guys like Sean Cooper, that, in spite of all the crazy rumors from a few months ago, there's still a good relationship there. Everything is as good as it needs to be, and there's a better understanding of who the point guys are, who they need to be talking to at these schools.
This might be premature, but that 2025 class, I think we're going to look up in a few years, and if things continue to go the way that we think they might under this regime, I think we're going to look up and say that 2025 class is the one that, I don't know, changed the direction of the program, but we're going to look back and be like, that's a group that.
Well, it's just, ultimately, I mean, you talk about importance of going and getting the top recruits in the country to come and play at Oklahoma when you're going to the SEC. It as good as that group could be and already is as incoming juniors, it seems like maybe it is the turning of a tide.
And if you can get 8
nationally.
to 10 in your own backyard,
Exactly. Sure.
That's what's amazing.
Sure.
Sure. Don't know if it's ever going to work out like that again, but it is absolutely lining up that way.
Kids that know what the University of Oklahoma is and grew up watching them, I think that those things matter. I know it's not the same, and we can get into that, but like I don't know. There's this feeling that if they can get these guys that we're talking about, and like Bob said, kids that grew up in Oklahoma and understand it, I just feel like we're going to look up in a few years and be like, that's the class that kind of changed the tide.
Yeah.
And Josh, we'll take a step back to 2024, but stay in the state. Devon Jordan released his top 5. We've seen OU kind of rack up the commitments. Now Jordan has his top 5. Where does the Sooner stand here? Is he still a legitimate take? Is he still someone that Brandon Hall and Jay Valai are still going after in a very heavy way?
Yeah, my impression is that Oklahoma is absolutely still a contender here. They are, this is a guy that and it's funny because you talk to some people around Tulsa and you get very different reviews. There are some that think his potential is just sky high, like he could be outstanding, and there are some that's like, I just want to see more. I don't know what it is, but I think Oklahoma definitely buys in to the former of those two arguments. They like his potential. Very long, athletic guy. For those that have missed it, put out a top 5 of Texas A&M, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, TCU, and Alabama. I think Oklahoma is going to be tough to beat. I mean, we've seen OU through the years at Tulsa Union. I don't think there's any school in the state where they've had a better hit rate. Like they usually get who they want at Union. The Alabama thing is a bit of a wild card because it kind of depends on when you're having conversations and who you're talking to, how much Alabama's ready to push for him. I think right now he's kind of a secondary option, pun intended, I guess. But there is, if Alabama tries to push down, we all know Alabama can surprise you at any given time. So you can't go to sleep there. I know at one point TCU was very real in this recruitment. That's not the vibe I get right now. I mean, don't get me wrong. He is a quiet kid, so some of this is connect the dots a little bit. But my impression is if it's not OU, it's probably going to be because Alabama made a big run and kind of surprised some people. So we'll watch and see what happens with him. I know, we're hoping to have George speak to him here in the near future, so he can probably provide some insight. We'll have George really getting in the recruiting. I love it.
Hey,
but,
I love some Friday Night Lights. I guess it's Thursday night.
Thursday Night Lights this week.
Yeah.
Then you got some Friday Night Lights next week.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It is wild that
it's
the
nuts.
high school season begins next week.
I mean, and it really, and you've got so many guys, and, Bob, you may want to get into some of this, where you've got a lot of guys that are coming down to decisions at some of their games, like Nigel Smith at his home opener. Andy Bass is coming around to his. David Stone's going to make an announcement at his game on August 26th. So you've got a lot. It usually doesn't play this way. I
Right? It's
remember
weird,
thinking
right?
last year with
It's-
McCarty Vickers. Yeah, like remember McCarty Vickers did his before his game. I think at halftime of his game
Yes.
last year, if I remember
Yep.
right.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, that's really unusual. That's kind of weird. And now I guess maybe that's the new trend. Guys saying they want to get it done before their senior year. Well, they're literally
Right up to the
doing
minute,
it,
yes.
minutes before. Yeah, exactly.
Is there any added pressure on the David Stone situation, considering, and I don't know if you guys have talked about this, just as far as him being so damn important now that you're out on Williams Nwaneri? I mean, added pressure in terms of a decision for the kid. Like, I'm sure that he has to feel that, right?
Oh, he has to. I mean, like, and he
Is that good or
David
bad?
is
I
a smart
don't know.
kid. That is a variable I wonder a little bit about, Eddie. Like, how does he respond to that? Is that knowing David, I think that's more spotlight for him, and I think David enjoys that. So,
Right.
like, to me, I read that as a good thing, but it's one of those things. Like I said to you guys the other night when somebody asked me, then they were talking about, can OU afford David Stone, with NIL money? I was like, can they afford not to land David Stone? Like, I don't. He's almost that guy where I'm like, I don't care what the number is. If you physically can do it, you do it, because you can't miss guys like this. You can't miss the message that sends to a guy like Danny Okoye or a guy like Nigel Smith. Those guys all know each other. Like, they're all familiar. Williams Nwaneri knows them. He's been on some visits with some of these guys, but it's not the same. Like Danny and David, like they're in-state guys. They're more familiar with each other. David and Nigel have talked multiple times about playing together. That's absolutely that's a conversation that has happened, several times. So if you can land him, maybe that helps you with those two. Maybe that helps you with Dominic McKinley. I mean, I think McKinley, of all the 5 stars OU was in on, he was always going to be the longest shot, in my opinion. So maybe that doesn't help, but it sure is not going to hurt, because you get to tell that guy, hey man, you're not going to be taking on double teams your whole life. You're going to be inside there with another big time guy. You guys can go and, force them to make some decisions on the inside. So we'll see. But I mean, David Stone he went from, I thought, the guy that was clearly the most important guy in this class to Oklahoma to just almost an absolute must get.
What happens if they don't get David Stone?
No, we're not
We
doom
run
and
for the
gloom.
hills.
We're not doing that,
we run
man.
for the hills.
Do they have to shut the school down? I mean,
It would be a massive blow, and one that Todd Bates would have dug a hole that, whether it's right or wrong, he would have to dig out of.
yeah.
And I think
Yep.
that it's a situation that you really, truly don't even want to think about if you're the Oklahoma staff right now, with the fallout from Williams Nwaneri, because there are still very, very good candidates out there. It's just it would be terrible. Like, it would be a bad situation that I don't think anybody wants to sign up for.
I know they're happy with Ashton Sanders. It sounds like he's made a good impression early on, and that's great. Like, and he may go on to be a great player. The perception, you can't 2 straight years go find the little 6'1", 280, fire plug defensive tackle. Like, you need a big win after chasing game like this. You can't miss David Hicks, David Stone, Williams Nwaneri. Like, if you're I mean, and that, again, I'm not even saying it's fair. I agree with Eddie. Like, I'm not saying it's a justifiable stance, but if you're going to chase game this big and get this close and pass up on a lot of other guys you probably could have had, man, it's like I said, it's a big gamble. But again, I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think they're going to reel in David Stone. I really do. Now, I absolutely reserve the right to change my mind, but there's nothing I've heard so far. I know everybody is so doom and gloom right now because of Williams Nwaneri. There's no direct correlation. There's no direct impact. Like, it's just that 5 stars going to Missouri. Oklahoma probably gets their in-state guy, and everybody keeps moving.
That will be good news when that day comes, and it's actually just kind of right around the corner, coming up on the 26th. So, all right, I think that is it, unless anybody has any comments, concerns, criticisms to share.
Nope.
Bob, they did release the non-conference basketball schedule.
I wasn't going to get into it. But all right.
It's cool they're playing a game over at McCaslin, but outside of that, I don't really have any takeaways from the non-conference slate.
It's cool they're going there, and then they've got some resume building opportunities. Not a lot of them. Only one of them is at Lloyd Noble when Providence will come to town. But you're going to play Iowa, Seton Hall, or USC in that multi-team event. You're going to play Arkansas and Tulsa again. You're going to play North Carolina in Charlotte. You got to at least go 500 in those type of games, and then feel like you can do some work within the conference. It's another nice schedule, and that McCaslin game against Pine Bluff, that's going to be just a fun atmosphere, just to kind of see what it's all like. It might lead to some backlash, like this is why the game should be here in the first place, but that'll at least make it something different compared to when Pine Bluff was here last year and there was like 2,000-3,000 people in the crowd.
It might have been 500. 2,000 might have been inflated a little bit. Kenny Gajewski not making anybody happy around Norman. I don't really have a take on that. What are they supposed to say? They're pissed about it. I don't think that Kelly Maxwell's move is comparable to Jordy Ball's move by any means because of the venom between the Bedlam schools. I don't know. Let the fans.
There was the
argue
pitching
about
coach
it on Twitter
situation, which I know played into a role of her looking at other schools. We talked to Trace Ford Monday. It's like, just ignore it. I know it might be hard. Ignore all the hate that will be coming your way. That was his advice to Kelly Maxwell on how to try to handle going to the other side of Bedlam. And for those that didn't read it, Kenny basically just said it's going to be hard for her to be ever welcomed back into the program as long as he is there. That sounds ludicrous. Like, he kind of changed his tone, his tune from when she first hit the portal, where he was gracious and said, she's done a lot for us and we wish her the best. And I don't know if he didn't know initially, because we all sort of thought it's going to be OU from the jump. Maybe he didn't know that it was supposed to be OU, because I thought that was him trying to soften the blows. Like, I get it. One of our all-time greats is going to OU, but let's be cool with it. But now, like a month later, much different reaction.
I'm sure Doug Gottlieb will be in Norman to pick up her letter jacket eventually. All right. Well, Josh, we appreciate it. Do you have anything more to add this afternoon?
Muted.
You're muted, Josh.
And that'll do it.
Damn it!
It does make me feel better being able to see it.
See it, right? Yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I know that I haven't just left the mic. Yeah.
Right.
I will say this is the second straight week we have promised Doom Pod and not given Doom Pod, and that's I think
a YouTube
we're gonna have
video.
some pissed off people about that.
Drinking too much Kool-Aid.
Exactly. That may be what it is. Like, we'll do like a YouTube Doom or something like that.
We could probably do that.
But,
I know that Georgia's already picking Oklahoma to win the national championship. So
false.
Well, I mean,
there's your doom.
There's your doom.
There's your doom.
Now,
All right,
Eddie, you're going to Carl Albert, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to Carl Albert tomorrow night, yes.
Okay.
So that should be pretty good. I'm excited to see the machine that is Carl Albert. I'm also excited to see the machine that is Washington, as well as the machine that is Heritage Hall. I mean, you're truly talking about maybe the three better programs in the state at one spot on Thursday night. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Seeing Kevin Sperry spin it with all of his new teammates, seeing Andy Bass run all over people, and then obviously see the tight end duo of Cooper Alexander and Nate Roberts. So it's going to be good. It's going to be good. It feels like football is right around the corner, and that's because somewhat it sort of kind of is. So, all right, boys. Well, thank you for joining us here on the Unofficial 40. We will talk to you next week.